So for this tutorial, I want to show you how to create kind of a surrealistic sphere, something that isn't too difficult to do, starting with a plain circle and then doing some light shading with a little bit of a special effect for the layer style. What I want to do though is, even though I made this one from the photo, I'm noticing that this doesn't really look, it almost looks like this is just a continuation of the original picture. So I'm going to try it with this one, and let's see if this one results in something a little bit different. So we're going to start with a landscape image. Sometimes road images work a little bit better because then you can kind of see the path diverging. But for this part, what we're going to do is we're going to start with turning on the guides. Now, the guides should already show up, the rulers, I mean, right over here on the side. So when I click here, if I press Control R, it should bring up the rulers right here. And this right now is about 72 inches this way by about 42 this way. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold the mouse button down inside of the ruler. And when you do that, you can start to drag. And when this pops out, you can see the little number is showing up right there. This doesn't have to be exact, but we're going to get pretty close. So at 72, we're looking at about 36 inches over for the center. So I'm going to move this. Now it may want to snap into place. Actually, it looks like that. We'll go ahead and leave that there. I'm going to drag this one down as well. And this one being 47 inches, we'll say 48, we'll move up to about 24. And it looks like when I get close, it's actually snapping it dead center. All right, so the next piece that we're going to do is we're going to create a flat circle to be able to draw or to create the sphere. So what we're going to do with this is we are going to take this elliptical marquee. What's this button right here? It's underneath the rectangle marquee. And we're going to put the crosshairs right here in the center. And I'm going to start to drag. Now, don't let go of the mouse. As I'm dragging, I'm going to press the Alt key. That will keep it coming from the center. And then if I hold down the Shift key as well, this is going to make it a perfect circle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it about that big. Right down there at the bottom, see down here where the water line is? I'm going to move it to about slightly into the water line. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new blank layer. So just click right here. And I'm going to fill that with black. As long as black is your foreground color, go ahead and press Alt Backspace. And then go ahead and press Control D as in dog. That will deselect. And if you press Control and the semicolon, it'll take the guides away. If you press Control semicolon again, it'll bring it back. So that's just a shortcut. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to make a copy of this background layer. So we're going to duplicate that one. And I'm going to move that up. So it's right up here. And then we're going to run a filter that's called Spherize. It's going to turn it into a little bit of a sphere. So what I'm going to do is go to Filter. And let's go to Distort and Spherize. And I'm going to crank the Spherize all the way over to 100. I'm going to leave it at normal. I'm going to click OK. So what this does is it pushes it out almost like you're looking through like a little prism or a little orb, like a glass ball. And then what we're going to do with this is we're going to shrink this down so that it's going to fit inside of this little circle. So I'm going to go press Control or Command T. And I'm going to come up here to the corner. And before I start to drag, I'm going to hold down the Shift and the Alt. I'm going to start to drag in. Now that keeps it proportional, but what we need to do is we need to let go of the Alt and the Shift once you've got it kind of shrunk down. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a free transform, and I'm going to bring that up so that it snaps right to the circle. I'm going to drag this back in a little bit, and it should automatically snap right to the edge. So I'm pulling in just so I can kind of see where to go. And then I have that set up. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it so that this is inside of this circle. So what we're going to do is, let me double check. I forgot to hit the check mark there. So I've accepted the transformation. It'll take just a moment. So now you can kind of see you get that little rounded edge. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this circle to make the selection. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take and hold down the Control or the Command key and click on that circle and make sure that this background copy layer is the one that's active. And I'm going to hit Mask. So what that just did is it just hid. So I used this to make the selection and it hid the outside edge. So now we're already starting to get a little bit of this. Now you'll notice though that there's this black line that's kind of annoying. What we're going to do is we're going to turn off that. We're still going to keep this because we may use this again. In fact, we will use this again to do some of the shading and stuff, but I want to get rid of that little sharp line that's showing up. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go in and actually Control click again on that mask. On that layer. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and inside of here, we're going to twirl. We're going to do this filter, distort, twirl, and have it at about 50% and hit OK. And then I'm going to run that filter one more time. Twirl. So what this will do is it'll give off the illusion that it's been slightly twisted. It'll help create that kind of fake rounded edge there. And then once we've done that, we're going to start to add in some shadows and some highlights over on this side to give off the illusion of there being a little bit more of a gloss to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch to our brush. So I'm going to choose this tool. So it's the B tool. What I'm going to do is I'm dropping the hardness down to 0. I've got the size at about 500. Doesn't have to be exactly that, but that is something that will work a little bit. Notice I still have the selection made here. That's going to be really important to have. If you don't have that already, press Control and click on the thumbnail of layer 1. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make a brand new blank layer. And this is going to be where the shadows go. So I'm just going to paint a little bit of a shadow right along there. Not going in too far, but that circle is helping to protect the edge. And then what we'll do is we're going to switch the colors so that we can actually paint on the highlight. So switch that one right here. And then I'm keeping it kind of halfway outside of the circle. Kind of bringing that down a little bit. In fact, I'm going to undo. Going to make it so there's a little bit more of the white on the inside there and it tapering down to less and a little bit less up there. So what that's going to do is create the shadow and the highlight. Now what we're going to do is we're going to change the blending mode to soft light and we're going to change the opacity so it fades out a little bit. So right here, I'm going to go to soft light. Just that alone, see how that's creating that illusion of a little bit of a highlight and a little bit of a shadow. And then let's go ahead and drop this down. Let's see what looks good. And let's try it at about, that looks good, right about there, about 55%. Cool. So what's happened is I've just got a little bit of a black edge and a white edge. The real key was getting the Control click on that layer to be able to restrict it so it doesn't paint outside. And then what we're going to do is we're going to apply a inner glow to the layer right here to make it feel like there's a little bit of a fade out glow that's happening. So we're going to click on the layer right there. We're going to go to inner glow. You're going to change the color to white. And then you're going to switch your blending mode to overlay. I would change the opacity to 31. Move your choke down to 0 and move your size. Let's see what this is doing. See what's happening in the actual photo down here. As I'm dragging this around, it's creating that little bit of a glowing edge. So let's move this up a bit, maybe about 175 or so, something like that. You can see what it looks like without and then with. So it's just adding a slight glow. And then I want to actually make that a little bit smaller. Let's go to about 125 or so. And then really the key thing is making sure that that overlay is set for your blending mode. And then the color is white. Your noise is 0. Your opacity is about 31 or so. And then we're going to be ready to add a new blank layer right on top, and we're going to paint even more highlights. So right up here, going to move this to that top layer. I'm going to control click on this black circle again so I can protect the edge. White paintbrush, and I'm going to actually paint right, I'm just going to tap a few times right up along here. And then I'm going to change the blending mode to overlay. And we're going to drop the opacity down a bit because that blue that's happening is a little too much. We're creating just a little bit of a highlight in that area. Let's drop that down a little bit more, about 36 or so. I think that should work. And then we're going to finish this thing up by adjusting just one more. We're going to add some shadows in. So we're going to make another area here. What we're going to do is we're going to put a shadow underneath. So what I would like to do is Control D to deselect, or Command D if you're on a PC. I'm going to switch my brush to black. I made that the foreground color. And then I'm just going to tap twice in one spot. And I'm going to press Control T or Command T. That's going to be the transform. I'm going to shrink that down, stretch this out just a little bit. What I'd like to do is move that down a little bit more. So I'm making that circle into this little thin shadow that's going to act as the shadow that's here. I'm going to drag that down. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to play around with the blending mode. Let's go ahead and try, let's see if a linear burn will end up working. And then let's drop the opacity a little bit. Something like that. The darker the shadow, the closer it's going to give off the illusion that it's actually sitting close to the water. And then if this was just set to normal, kind of blends in a little bit, but let's try a couple other blending modes. I'm just using the scroll wheel on my mouse to see if I like anything else that's there. So that overlay added a little bit of color. That's interesting, but it just looks like the sun's hitting it. So let's actually go back to the linear burn. I'm going to drop the opacity, probably about 50% or so. All right, and that is the finished effect. I'm going to click away, whoops, apply. And that is the finished effect with the ball. You could experiment with another image and kind of see what it looks like. If you wanted to move this up a little ways, the way you would do it is you'd hold down the Shift key after you've clicked on this bottom layer. So right here, I'm going to click on this photo. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and I'm going to click up to layer 3. And now, see, I can move this ball around if I wanted to see if it would look better up top, if it would look better lower. I kind of like moving it up just a little bit so there's a little bit more grass here. When it's right up here against the water, that kind of bleeds in a little bit, and I think it might look a little bit cooler right there. And then I can grab the shadow and kind of decide what I want to do with that, maybe even drop it a little bit more. That part I'm not going to be super picky on, but there's a nice way to be able to create the edge. So when you look at the way that this is set up, you've got the picture that's been spherized. This one's just got shadows and highlights on it. This added a little bit more of a gloss at the top, and that ended up grabbing the shadow underneath. And then that inner glow helped to put just a little bit of a light edge all the way around to give off the illusion of it being 3D. I'll go ahead and save that as a PSD file, and we'll be ready to move on to the next one.